Hello everyone, what is up? Welcome back to another episode of Killer Instinct, you guys. Thank you so much for joining me here today. If you're new here, hi, my name is Savannah and I am your host of Killer Instinct. And before we get started, make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button. That way you never miss an episode. We post weekly here on the podcast every single Wednesday. You guys aren't going to want to miss it. We also upload the video version onto YouTube on Wednesdays as well, so make sure you are subscribed. And if you're looking for more exclusive Killer Instinct content, you can always find that over on our Patreon, where we post an additional 3 full-length exclusive Killer Instinct episodes a month and end the month with an exclusive live stream as well. If you decide to join Patreon at any given point, you will also be given access to all of the previous episodes we have already done. So if you're interested in that, the link will always be in the description box below for you to check out. Now, with that being said, let's jump into why we are here today. Now, as you can tell by the title of today's episode, today we are talking about the shocking murder of Angela Craig. Now, you may have heard about this case in the media recently because this case, when I am currently recording it, is undergoing trial. I am recording this episode on Friday, July 25th, and as of everything that I have seen, I am currently up to date on where this trial stands as of now. However, the trial is not over, but I did want to discuss this case today. This is a case that I have seen in the media recently, as well as over the past 2 years when it initially took place. And I know sometimes when there's such a surplus of information and so many different articles and things coming out about it constantly, it can be hard to figure out what the facts of the case are. So that is what I am here to give you today. If you're curious in learning more about what took place here, this case is absolutely shocking. It's twisted, and the new details that have emerged from this case are going to leave you stunned. So with that all being said, let's jump right on into it today. Angela Craig was born on April 15th, 1979 in Dodge City, Kansas, to a big family of 10 siblings. She was known for her kindness, her humor, and her dedication to her family. Angela had married a man named James Craig on December 18th, 1999, and the two of them settled down in Denver, Colorado, where they had 6 children together. Angela was an incredibly dedicated mother, as well as an incredibly dedicated wife. It was said that her family was her number one priority. Her husband, James Craig, worked as a dentist. He had opened his own practice called Summerbrook Dental Group, and Angela was right alongside with him, supporting him throughout the entirety of opening up and starting his own business. And she also worked at Summerbrook as an office manager, helping James build the business to success. James also had another business partner named Ryan Redfern, and the two of them ran this dental business together, and both of their wives, Angela and Ryan's wife, were very much involved in the process, so it was a very family environment. Those who saw Angela and James together in the office claimed that they were always joking around with each other. They had a very friendly, playful, loving banter with one another. However, they were also able to be serious when needed as well. They would have strategy meetings, trying to figure out how to market the business to take it to the next level. Angela was also someone who had many different hobbies and passions. She loved woodworking, she loved exercising, she loved nature, and she absolutely loved animals as well. Angela was a proud member of the Church of Latter-day Saints, where she worked as a choir director, a teacher, and a youth organizational leader for their church. She was also very much a people person. As much as Angela loved staying at home and being with her family, she was very much able to adapt in any scenario. People just were drawn to Angela. She had an ability to make everyone feel safe and make people feel like they can very much open up to her and really open that door to that conversation. So she was able to really talk it up with anyone. Now, this case begins in March of 2023, and in early March 2023, Angela fell suddenly and mysteriously incredibly sick. And this was not common for Angela. Like I said, she was someone who prioritized her health. She worked out a lot. She was very physically fit. So for her to fall sick so quickly and suddenly was very concerning. On March 6th of 2023, which is really when the symptoms first began to show, Angela was complaining of dizziness and feeling weak. She decided to go to the doctor at Parker Adventist Hospital and was released the same day. And when she was speaking to the doctor, she told them that her day started out as normal. She woke up, she had a protein drink that her husband James had made for her, but it was shortly after that that she began feeling sick. Angela did mention to the doctors that she thought that it could be because James had put more of the caffeine and vitamin supplements in their shakes than normal. She explained that she had been texting James earlier that day regarding her not feeling well and her condition, and James had told her that he had put 1 big scoop of caffeine and 1 big scoop of vitamin B into their drinks, and Angela told them that she normally just does a small scoop of each. So at first, she chalked up her condition to it possibly being just too much of what she was given. However, when it wasn't going away, when the sickness, the dizziness, the weakness wasn't going away as the day went on, that is when she began to worry. Now, the doctors ran every blood test and they also did an MRI on Angela. However, nothing came back as being worrisome. They weren't able to detect anything wrong with her. So like I mentioned, they did release Angela that same day on March 6th. The doctors told Angela to go home and get some rest, and everyone really just hoped for her recovery. But on March 7th, Angela still was not feeling well, and she went to the urgent care clinic. However, just like the day before, no one could figure out what was wrong with Angela, so she was again sent home. That was until March 9th when she returned back to the Parker Adventist Hospital, telling them that she still was not feeling well, and not only that, but her symptoms were worsening. She claimed that she had passed out and fainted briefly that morning while James was at work, and she was really starting to worry that something could be very wrong. She ended up staying at the hospital for several days before she was released on March 14th. During that time, the doctors did many more tests, many more comprehensive tests, really every test that they could imagine and think of, but they weren't able to figure out what was wrong with Angela. And as you can imagine, this was incredibly frustrating for Angela and her family because all they wanted was answers, and clearly something was very wrong. Now, Angela did go home on March 14th, but on March 15th, that following day at approximately 11 a.m., Angela Craig was accompanied to the University Hospital in Colorado by her brother Mark because she was experiencing more severe headaches and dizziness. She was barely able to keep herself up straight. Mark said that he actually had to carry Angela from her bed to the car in order to get her to the hospital. Angela was admitted, and several hours later at 2 p.m., she experienced a seizure, and that seizure, along with all of the other symptoms she was having, led her to being placed on life support in the ICU. Now, again, doctors at this hospital as well were really struggling to find a reason for Angela's very sudden medical problems. For all things considered, Angela seemed very healthy, and they were not able to come up with anything that would be a reason to this sudden decline in health. But this is when things began to change, because on March 15th, when Angela was in the hospital, when she was dropped off by her brother Mark, James had met her at the hospital, and alongside James was his business partner and very close friend, Ryan Redfern, and his wife. So everyone was gathering at the hospital because they knew of Angela's condition. They knew it was worsening. Ryan had met James at the hospital as moral support. Again, not only were they partners in business, but they were just very close family friends in general. So Ryan and his wife also showed up to the hospital to be there to support James and Angela. And when Ryan Redfern heard of how quickly Angela's condition had declined, This is when he himself was starting to get suspicious. He had actually approached a nurse who was working at the hospital, claiming that he believed it was possible that Angela was a victim of poisoning. Ryan had explained to the nurse that James had recently ordered potassium cyanide for their dental practice, which stood out to Ryan because there would be no medical reason for this purchase. They did not need this at all. They did not ever order potassium cyanide. They never needed potassium cyanide. And even more than that, the reason that it stood out to Ryan so much was because James had ordered it claiming it was for personal use, but shipped it to the dental office instead of his home. Now, with this information, the nurse, who is a mandated reporter, contacted authorities immediately. Now, the following day, on March 16th, police sat down with Ryan and his wife, Michelle, trying to get some background information on their relationship with James and Angela. Ryan told authorities that he and James had been in business together since August of 2022, when Ryan took over the Summerbrook Dental Group. Like I mentioned, this was James's business originally. However, Ryan joined in when James filed for bankruptcy in 2021. Ryan claimed that he originally met James back in dental school, and the two had known each other for 20 years, so Ryan and James thought it would be a great thing to go into business together, and with Ryan coming in, it would also give James the opportunity to keep the business running, so it seemed like a win-win for everyone. However, Ryan stated in January of 2023, so just 2 months before Angela's health problems started to arise, James confided in Ryan about some marital problems that he was having with Angela. Now, Ryan also told authorities that he had learned through another office manager about the potassium cyanide purchase. That is how he was made aware of it. He did not see it himself. However, another office manager brought it to his attention. Now, the office manager who did see it was named Caitlin, and Caitlin claimed that the first day that Angela ever became sick, she was working in the dental office late one night after hours, and James had come in to use one of the exam room computers for something. Now, Caitlin did think that this was odd when it first happened because this was not something that James had typically done, and it was also after hours, and why did he need to come in? It just wasn't making sense. But considering James was one of the bosses at Summerbrook, Caitlin overlooked it. Now, about 30 minutes later, she claimed that James left the office and texted Caitlin, telling her that the office would be receiving a package in the next few days and not to open it. Now, this package did arrive a few days later on Monday, March 13th, and the package had been opened by another employee. So the package comes into the office, another employee who's not Caitlin opens the package. Caitlin then sees the package after it's opened and realizes that this was the package that James was referring to. And so she looked inside of the package because, again, it was already opened. And that is when she noticed the biohazard sticker and a label for potassium cyanide. Now, for those who are not aware, and again, I'm no scientist, I'm no doctor, but for those who are not aware, because I was not, potassium cyanide is extremely lethal if ingested or if consumed in any capacity. It prevents cells from using oxygen, and those cells will eventually die. Your heart, your respiratory system, your central nervous system, everything gets impacted when you ingest or consume potassium cyanide, and it's a very quick and sudden death. Now, after seeing the potassium cyanide box, Caitlin later went home that day and Googled potassium cyanide and learned what can happen when someone ingests it, and realized that the symptoms that Angela had been experiencing were very familiar with the symptoms that someone would have if they were ingesting or consuming potassium cyanide. And it is when she had heard that Angela was back in the hospital on March 15th, so 2 days after this potassium cyanide was delivered, that is when she reached out to Ryan directly. So Caitlin told Ryan about the delivery. Now, Ryan then went on to say that after he left the hospital on March March 15th and spoken to a nurse, him and Michelle went back to Michelle's car together. And when they did, Ryan received a phone call from James, and Ryan put the call on speaker. Now, Ryan told police that on this phone call, James had asked him if he had said anything to the nurses and hospital staff, which Ryan did admit that he talked to the staff regarding something that he had heard at work. Ryan told James of the package that James had ordered to the office, the potassium cyanide. Now, according to Ryan, James immediately tried to brush this off, saying that the package was never opened and it was a ring that he had purchased for Angela. No one would know what was in the package, but Ryan combated this, saying that he knew it was not a ring and that the package was very much opened, and that is how they knew it was potassium cyanide inside. Now, when James realized this, James then changed his story and admitted to Ryan that the package was in fact potassium cyanide, but that Angela had asked him to order it. Now, James didn't have a good explanation for why Angela would ask him to order this, and all James said was that Angela had asked him to order it because she did not have the proper credentials to do so. So he really didn't give an explanation as to why this was ever there or why this was ordered in the first place. And Ryan claimed that in this conversation, James was very much more or less insinuating that Angela was potentially suicidal. James had actually confirmed this in a conversation that he had had with the CPS worker on March 16th, 2023, after detectives had put this case on CPS's radar. Now, when James spoke to the CPS worker, he had alleged that Angela was suicidal and had been struggling with her mental health for quite some time. James had even gone as far as to say that he personally had to revive Angela on multiple occasions over the last few months because she had attempted several times to take her own life. James said that the reason that he believed for her increase in her depression and suicidal ideations is due to James asking Angela for a divorce in 2022. So James is saying that he had asked Angela for a divorce in December, and since then, her depression had only gotten worse, and he himself had to medically intervene several times in order to revive her. James said that he believed that Angela was intentionally overdosing in the months after asking for a divorce. However, he never reported any of these incidents to authorities, to 911. He also never saw any professional or medical help for Angela following these incidents either. And the CPS worker noted that she thought that this was very suspicious, considering none of Angela's 6 children ever reported her having any sort of depression or previous suicide attempts. And it was hard to believe that Angela would have made multiple attempts to end her life without any of her 6 children ever having any recollection of something happening. Now, on March 16th, 2023, detectives got a search warrant for both James and Angela's cell phone. They also got a search warrant for James's wallet and for their family home in Denver. Now, during the search of the home, police discovered multiple items that they believed could be evidence in their investigation. These items included multiple kinds of protein powders, multiple workout shakers and cups, a computer tablet, 2 different Ziploc bags that contained white substances that were not labeled, and a water bottle located in the exercise bike in Angela and James's bedroom. Now, that same day, March 16th, police also got a search warrant for the Summerbrook dental office and collected a hard drive for the computer that James was seen using on March 6th. Police also noticed a small handheld vacuum that had a white powdery substance inside of it that they collected. And when detectives looked into the Google searches on the hard drive of the computer that James was seen working on March 6th, they saw that not only was the Google Chrome on that computer signed into James's personal email, but on February 27th, so just a few weeks prior to Angela feeling sick, there were multiple Google searches made under James's account that were incredibly suspicious and very telling. These searches included how many grams of pure arsenic will kill a human, and is arsenic detectable in an autopsy? Now, if you don't know, similar to potassium cyanide, arsenic is also incredibly dangerous, toxic, and poisonous, if consumed in its inorganic form. So for police already believing that it's possible that James could have poisoned his wife, and then seeing this, the pieces were starting to come together. Police also saw that on February 27th, there was an Amazon order from James's Amazon account where he ordered 10 grams of arsenic metal and shipped it to his home in Denver. And it was left in the mailbox on March 4th, 2023, just 2 days before Angela got sick. And along with that, police also saw the order that James had made of the potassium cyanide that was delivered to the dental office. So now, with that all being said, I want to take a moment and talk about the text messages that police found between Angela and James because they are very telling. When looking into Angela's phone, police discovered her text thread with James, and it was clear that the two were working through something within their marriage. On March 1st, 2023, just a few days prior to Angela falling sick, Angela texted James saying, quote, "Your healing and happiness and this marriage is more important than my day. You are more important than my day," end quote. To which James responded with, "Thank you. I know you are getting ready to go out and spend some time with Tony, and I would just ask that you keep last night's conversation details just between you and I. I trust Tony, but it was hard for me to even tell you that stuff, and I'm definitely not ready for anyone else to hear it," end quote. Angela responded by saying, quote, "Of course, I wasn't planning on talking about any of it. I haven't actually talked to Tony about any of the last few months since the initial conversation," end quote. On March 6th is when Angela first speaks to James about her health condition and not feeling well. The morning of March 6th, James texts Angela thanking her for making him a protein shake, and he told her that he loved her. And Angela writes back saying she feels dizzy and that her head feels weird. After some back and forth conversation, Angela said, quote, "It feels more like I feel when I take heavy meds and everything adjusts and moves slowly, like I'm moving in thick gel. My eyes are struggling to stay focused," end quote. She then goes on to say that she feels drugged, to which James responds with, quote, "Given our history, I know that might be triggering, but just for the record, I didn't drug you. I am super worried though. You looked pale before I left, like your lips even," end quote. And if you're sitting there wondering what in the world James is referring to when he says, "Given our history, I know that must be triggering, but for the record, I didn't drug you," just hang tight. We're going to get into all of that. Now, over the next few days, James and Angela go back and forth talking about doctor's appointments and Angela's condition, and James does seem like a concerned and loving husband. On March 7th, he said, quote, "I love you. It was so nice hanging out with you and just watching a show and snuggling. I'm sorry that you aren't feeling well and that you feel like I'm disappointed about that, but I'm not disappointed at all. Just feeling empathy for how hard that must be for you. Hopefully things can improve and get better. I am so grateful that the last couple of days have allowed me to have more flexibility in my schedule. God really does know what he's doing," end quote. So that was the gist of what police had seen when they were going through Angela and James's text messages. But they found more when looking into James's emails in particular. Police had discovered that through James's emails, it appeared that he was allegedly having an affair. The emails that they found were back and forth on James's personal email with a woman named Karen Kane. Karen and James had met weeks prior between February 22nd and February 25th at a dental conference in Las Vegas. Now, Karen was going through a divorce at the time, and it is believed that while in Vegas, Karen and James got together and began developing a romantic relationship. Through James's email accounts, police saw email confirmations of flights that James was booking for Karen, the first being March 8th through 10th, 2023, and Angela was in the hospital March 9th through 14th. So that was going to overlap. Karen was supposed to come in to Denver during the time that Angela was in the hospital. The second flight that James had booked, that stay would have been from March 16th through the 20th and was purchased on March 4th, 2023. On March 16th, Karen sent an email to James saying, saying, quote, "Hi, honey. I am so sorry for what has transpired this week in your world. I am sorry that I am not part of your world to be more help to you, and instead I am pulling you away. This is so hard. I do want to give you any comfort I can, but I do not feel it is right for me to mix in with all of those gathering to mourn Angela either. And I do not want to meet your family as a friend and try to conceal what I feel for you. I love you." So things were definitely, by the sounds of it, moving very quickly between Karen and James themselves. Now, like I said, that was written on March 16th. And that was during the time that Angela was still on life support in the ICU. Now, on March 17th, 2023, police also spoke with one of Angela's sisters, Tony, who stated that her and Angela spoke daily and that Angela actually visited Tony in Utah from March 1st to March 5th. So right before Angela's sickness began. So Angela started to feel sick on March 6th, and between the 1st and the 5th, she was with her sister in Utah. Now, according to Tony, she said that Angela was perfectly fine during those 5 days. She wasn't feeling sick. She wasn't feeling bad. She was happy and positive and in good spirits. But Tony also gave more insight into Angela and James's marriage, to which she said has always been tumultuous. She claimed that James had had multiple affairs with several women over the years, and he also admitted to Angela that he had a pornography addiction that began when he was a teenager. Now, Tony had also told authorities that Angela had confided in her and told her that James had drugged her 5 years prior to Angela's death because he claimed he was planning on killing himself and didn't want to wake Angela up. However, he never went through with it. Now, it's very interesting that James is the one who has been singing from the rooftops that Angela was suicidal or had suicidal ideations and struggled with her mental health. And now police are learning this. And this is what is believed that James is referring to in the previous text messages where he tells Angela, "Given our history, I know it might be triggering, but just for the record, I didn't drug you." It's believed that that is what he is referring to, that he had previously drugged Angela. And once she was feeling sick and starting to feel like it could have been something that was put in her drink, that is when James got ahead of it and said, "I know that this is triggering, but I didn't drug you." That is what is believed that he meant by that. Now, Tony also claimed that over the years, Angela has said time and time again that she had planned on leaving James. However, was worried about the damages that it would do to their family, not only emotionally, but financially. Now, sadly, on March 18th, 2023, Angela passed away from her sickness. Tony, Angela's sister, had pleaded with James, asking him to get an autopsy for Angela so they could get answers as to what happened, but James refused, saying that if the doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong with her when she was alive, he wouldn't let them poke her when she was dead. Now, prior to Angela being pronounced as deceased, the authorities were very much in tune with what they believed was going on here. During the days that Angela was on life support leading up to her death, the authorities were very proactive in their investigation, getting into all of the details of this and really put together a strong case of what they believed was happening here. They believed that given the evidence that they had, that James Craig had been slowly poisoning and murdering his wife over a 10-day period and poisoning her with the chemicals that he had purchased online, such as the potassium cyanide and the arsenic. It is believed that given the timeline that James and Angela had been going through marital issues over the months. However, in late February, James met Karen Kane at the dental conference. He went home. He created a personal email account because records show that the email account that was used to be making these purchases of the plane tickets, the Amazon orders, the potassium cyanide, everything was made from this one email account called Jim and Waffles, and it was created on February 27th, so just days after James returned home from the dental conference. Police then know that the arsenic order was delivered to James's James's house on March 4th. They know that on March 5th, Angela returned home from her sister's house in Utah, and the following day on March 6th is when the illness begins. Police had enough evidence to arrest James at this point, so they did just that. On March 19th, 2023, just one day after Angela died, James was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. Now, like I mentioned in the very beginning, this case is currently undergoing a trial. The opening statements of this trial began with the prosecution claiming that the affairs and financial hardships were the motive for James to murder his wife, and the defense is stating that all of the evidence is circumstantial and that the trial is based off of nothing but assumptions. Now, thus far, former coworkers, detectives, investigators, friends and family, as well as two of the oldest daughters of James and Angela have testified. Now, these eldest daughters have confirmed that Angela was not suicidal and that she had great plans for her future. They emphasized how much Angela was excited to be a grandma in the future and how much she talked about finding a forever home. The eldest daughter also said that she too wanted an autopsy conducted, however, her dad refused. Now, what has been probably the most shocking to come out of this trial comes from the second eldest daughter's testimony. That was very recent over the past few days when I'm recording this. Now, this second eldest daughter claimed that while James, her father, had been in jail leading up to the trial, her and him had been in communication, and James had several requests for his daughter. The first request was to bail out another inmate in the jail, which she did. And once this inmate was released, this inmate gave the second eldest daughter a stack of handwritten letters. Now, in one of these letters, James had instructed his daughter to make a deep fake video using a burner laptop. He told her to purchase the laptop with a prepaid Visa gift card and allegedly instructed her on how to access the dark web to purchase the service that could provide the deep fake video. James allegedly also told her to upload the video to a thumb drive and tell detectives that she found the drive in her mother's bag and then destroyed the burner laptop. It's not clear specifically what James wanted the deep fake video to say. However, it is alleged that he was alluding to wanting it to talk about the fact that Angela was suicidal. He wanted the deep fake video to be of Angela talking, saying that she was suicidal, saying that she was depressed, that she was struggling with her mental health, anything that he believed would help his case. James also went on to say in the letters that he had been cheating on Angela, but he claimed that Angela did ask James to purchase the poison and that the two of them were playing a game of chicken when Angela accidentally took the game too far with the poison. Now, this was shocking for everyone to hear, not only from a moral standpoint. Take away the part that you're asking your daughter to bail out a former inmate or this other inmate that you know because you want this inmate to give your daughter instructions on what you want her to do, because you know if you wrote those letters in prison and they had to go through the prison system and the correctional officers in the prison read those letters, he would be in a lot of trouble. Forget that part, because even though that's crazy, that's not even the worst part of all of this. You are allegedly asking your daughter to create a falsified video of her dead mother to try and prove that you did not kill her. Now, other legal representatives not related to this case who have heard of this case have vocalized how much this is going to hurt the defense in this trial. Now, Karen Kane also took the stand, and she said that she did not find anything out of the ordinary regarding her relationship with James. She claimed that James had told her that he was also in the middle of his own divorce and that he was living separately from Angela. She claimed that she was also told by James that Angela had tried to kill herself on several different occasions using different sedatives that she found in James's dental office. There was also a testimony from another woman that James had been having an affair with while he was married, a woman named Elizabeth Gore, who James had gone on a trip with to Montana. However, the trip was cut short when Angela found out that James was off with another woman. Now, there was a coroner who also took the stand who claimed that she had to rely on the state medical records of Angela to come up with a conclusion on her cause of death. And it was through that she declared that Angela's cause of death was poisoning. She also stated that there was no mention of suicidal ideation in Angela's medical records. Now, a former cellmate of James testified that James had asked this specific cellmate to kill an Aurora Police Department investigator who was working on this case as well. Now, it's always important to take these types of testimonies with a grain of salt, considering they're usually given some sort of benefit or incentive for their testimony. However, it is still important to state in the case. Now, as of most recently, yesterday on July 24th, Angela's brother Mark had taken the stand, and he described Angela as being a very type A person, someone who was always very much in control. She was very strong, she was very dependable, and she was a very happy woman. Mark said that there was only one person in the world who was claiming that Angela was suicidal, and that person was James Craig. Mark claimed that he was the one that took Angela to the hospital on March 15th of 2023, and Mark said that when James met him at the hospital, it seemed as if James was wanting to get rid of Mark. He was definitely telling Mark, like, you can go, it's okay, we're probably going to be here for a while, so you can go home. And Mark said that he definitely felt dismissed by James, and that James was trying to orchestrate who could and could not be there, and it was more so who couldn't be there, because James wanted only him there at all times, talking to the doctors, talking to the nurses, etc. And that, you guys, is where we are at in this trial. I know it feels almost like an abrupt ending to this case, but that's where we're at in this trial. I'm going to be very curious to see which way the jury swings on this. I know I have my own opinions on it, and I'm very curious to hear what yours are as well. So with that being said, you guys, that's going to be all for me today. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Killer Instinct. Again, if you're new here, hi, my name is Savannah, and I'm your host of Killer Instinct. Make sure you go ahead and hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. That way you don't miss an episode. Like I said, we post weekly every single Wednesday. You're not going to want to miss it. The Patreon link will also be linked in the description box as well. And with that being said, you guys, I will see you next week. And until then, stay safe. Bye, guys.